Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of NU Takes. My name is Michael Bartholomew.
And I'm DDJ, and we're here to give our own hot takes and spicy opinions about all things Northwestern sports. So, Northwestern football lost 56-7 this past Saturday against Nebraska in what was the second largest margin of defeat in Pat Fitzgerald's 16-year tenure as Northwestern's head coach. The loss is already Northwestern's third of the year, setting up for the season to look more like 2019 than 2020, and leaving a lot of fans to wonder, where does NU go from here? Michael, how do you project the rest of Northwestern season?
I would say the Cats could end up 5-7. Looking at the next slate, I think Rutgers is a tough game. They're an experienced squad, and I think they're pretty well coached. And so I don't know if Northwestern will be able to, even though it's a home game, I don't know if they'll be able to stop Rutgers. Rutgers looks pretty good this year. Michigan in Ann Arbor, I chalk that up as blowout. Minnesota, that's a 50-50 game for me. That's the toughest game Northwestern has. It's very winnable for them. But I think that they might be able to pull out with that. Minnesota's look very unimpressive at times, and that is in part to injuries, but also it's just in part to they have similar struggles as Northwestern. And so I think that that's a toss-up game, and I think Northwestern will be able to get better on towards the year. And sure, it won't be fantastic product on the field. It won't be something that will shoot them up to looking like a ranked level team, but it'll be enough to duke out teams like Minnesota for a win. And then Iowa and Wisconsin, I don't know if Northwestern has much of a chance against those teams, even though Wisconsin's look very unimpressive at times. But I'm going to go with Purdue as a win. I think that that's a game that Northwestern could win in Wrigley Field. I think that's a cool environment, cool venue. And so I'm just going to go with that one because I think Purdue is sort of a lackluster squad as well. And Illinois, Northwestern beats Illinois every year. That's about as easy as it gets. So 5-7 is the optimist in me saying that. I don't know if they'll be able to get bowl eligible just based on the rest of their slate and their performance against teams like Nebraska and teams like Duke, who are, Nebraska's looked pretty good this year, but based on years past and based on the fact that Adrian Martinez is still their quarterback and he's, in my mind, the definition of average, then getting beat 56-7, that's drawing a lot of concerns for me to Northwestern.
I see where you're coming from. I think that, I can be optimistic, a lot of the time, but I don't see Northwestern winning another game for the rest of the season.
The rest of the season?
The rest of the season. Maybe one because, in Big Ten football, there's anything can happen, but, people talk about, oh yeah, it's whatever in Illinois, Northwestern always beats Illinois. Yeah. And Northwestern normally doesn't lose games by 49 points. Nebraska's 3-3 and they just beat Northwestern by 49 points. Nothing was working for Northwestern. They looked absolutely terrible out there in all facets of the game. The two lone bright spots, were both grad transfers. And I just, the rest of these teams have shown, I think, obviously, Rutgers got blown out this past weekend by Ohio State. But the rest of these teams have shown that they can compete against Big Ten competition and Power 5 competition. Northwestern has not. They have lost by 17 points to, granted, a very good Michigan State team. They just lost by 49, and they were getting blown out in the first half by Duke just two or 3 weeks ago. So, until Northwestern shows a little bit of fight in a conference game, if they can show they can take a lead, which they haven't done in 3 games against Power 5 opponents, none of which have been, the best teams that typically are the ones that give Northwestern troubles, I'm not going to believe that they can win another game this year. Yeah, I think it's just, for me, it's as simple as that.
You really think, Northwestern has looked very subpar at a lot of times this year, but the Big Ten West is pretty chaotic. And to look at a team like Illinois, who's very much struggled to move the ball in general this year and doesn't have a stellar defense, they're sort of just getting in tune with their system under Brett Bielema. You don't even look at that game, the hat game, and say I think Northwestern can bully him because Pat Fitzgerald, he's the mayor of Champaign-Urbana.
Yeah, but he has been for the past 5 years. But for the past 5 years, Northwestern's defense has not been as close to as bad as it's been so far this year. What did you take away from that Nebraska game? Any positives? Were there any positives to come out of that Nebraska game?
Stephon Robinson Jr. is pretty decent. I mean, he can catch the ball pretty good.
Have you seen Northwestern compete? Like, do you think that Northwestern has competed against any of the Power 5 opponents that they played? And do you think that is somehow, do you think that's going to change in the future? Do you think that they're going to improve?
I think they will improve. Honestly, I think by the end of the year, they're not going to be great. They're not going to be good, but they're going to be better than right now. And I guess when you lose 56-7 to Nebraska, it's really nowhere to go but up. I mean, I don't want to say that and then have a product like UConn football happen next week, but I think Northwestern is a team that historically, well, I know that Northwestern is a team that historically gets better down the stretch. As someone who's watched them for most of my life, that's really what I've seen. It's struggles early, and then by the end, they pick up some momentum, look solid. And granted, this is a different defensive regime with Jim O'Neill, but I think it's going to be more of the same sort of factors, especially because I hammer it every time, but because of all those positional turnovers. I mean, you look at Bryce Gallagher had 10 total tackles against Nebraska, and sure, it was because every single time the front four couldn't stop Nebraska's run game. But also, it's good to see a young player be able to put up numbers like that, 10 total tackles. That's pretty solid, giving visions of what his brother was doing. And I mean, if they can grow a little bit of consistency from guys like Bryce Gallagher, from guys like Stephon Robinson Jr., then they'll be able to get better towards the end of the year. And sure, they might not be able to be a above 500 team, but they can get to a point where they have a little bit of momentum going into 2022.
Given all of that, well, I mean, first of all, I think Bryce Gallagher, sure, 10 tackles on a stat sheet is nice, but like you just said, given the context of the game, he had to make those tackles. Those are basic tackles for him to make. But besides the point, moving forward, you're talking about players stepping up, Northwestern getting better. Who do you think that the quarterback should be on? Or who do you think that the quarterback should be from this point out?
I mean, in my mind, Helinski's the easy choice because just by saying that he is the youngest and starting Andrew Marty and starting Hunter Johnson isn't going to do anything for you next year. And I don't think Northwestern is looking that much into this year for the rest of the year. I mean, Pat Fitzgerald will tell you otherwise. He's going to say we're trying to win out, but that's in my mind unrealistic. And I think starting Helinski and getting him to mold with some players like a Bryce Kurtz, like Wayne Dennis Jr. I know that's our guy, so I'll throw him out there. Getting him to build a little bit of chemistry with this receiver bunch, a young receiver bunch, will be good to build momentum into the coming years and to show Northwestern what they have in a highly touted transfer quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I think that, no matter what Fitz says, this year's all about the younger guys on the team getting experience at this point. I think Helinski, sure, the offense didn't look good against Nebraska, but I mean, to be fair, Nebraska does have a very good defense. I mean, they showed that the week beforehand against Michigan State. And I think that Helinski, he made some good throws. He had that one touchdown drive in the first quarter, which looked solid, which looked promising. And outside of that, he just didn't really have a lot of opportunities, to have time in the pocket to make passes. And I think that, yeah, it's all about the future. I think that Helinski, it seems like, I'm not going to say that like a player like Brendan Sullivan or Carl Richardson isn't going to come out, and make a difference, but it seems like Helinski, he's still young. Like you said, he's got a couple of years of eligibility. He's looked pretty solid in the limited time that he's had. I think that this weekend is going to be, or next weekend, sorry, is going to be a big test for him because, against the Rutgers team that is susceptible on defense. Anything outside of him, on offense, I think that there's a number of good players who have showed, some ability that can step up, like Evan Hull, Anthony Tyus, even like Malik Washington, like you were talking about, like Jansen Huber-Price made his first catch against Nebraska, I believe, at a Big Ten game. So, that's what I want to see step on my offense. In terms of the defensive side of the ball, it's just a mess, in my opinion. It's just an absolute mess. Like, no, they know hate, but it's a mess. And I think that leads into, yeah.
And I will say, though, that Polinsky, if you look at his final stat sheet, it doesn't look crazy good. I think he had a quarterback rating of around like 25. And it is an incredibly challenging situation, though, to come into a game and to have your defense immediately give up 14 points or just immediately give up 7. But then for you to have to punt the ball away and then for them to immediately score once more. And then you're just climbing out of a 14-point hole and all you can do is throw the ball. Holinsky threw the ball 40 times. That's not how Northwestern's going to win games. Northwestern's going to win the games by pounding the ball. And to have Evan Hull get 7 carries, I think it was, that's not their formula for success. If you look at good Northwestern teams in the past, it's been with the foundation of a good running game. And it's been because of guys like Cam Porter last year, Justin Jackson in the past, Isaiah Bowser a few years ago. It's because these hard-nosed running backs are getting in there and being the mainstay of the offense and establishing the run so that the throws can be complementary. And I think that's where Holinsky would excel. And I think you can look into the stats. You can look into the 88 total yards, 88 passing yards he had against Ohio. You can look at the quarterback rating of the game against Nebraska and say Holinsky's not all that, but he is in a crazy difficult situation, especially with the group of receivers he's in. And it's just Wildcat fans, you just need to give the guy time. But
yeah, moving on from that.
Oh, I was going to say another point you made of this year doesn't matter. In my mind, I know we talked about play the younger quarterback, but I don't think that should be a theme of the entirety of the team. I don't know if you differ, but in my mind, there is no rebuilding in college football. It's always win now because winning now establishes a culture of winning and it draws in more recruits and it makes you more competitive year in, year out. It makes you a very respected program. And having rebuild years like what you're seeing in Florida State right now, Tallahassee. Florida State's becoming a joke of a program because they have started losing a ton and they're rebuilding by playing all these young guys. And while that may be great, however many years down the line, when you pan out a few good NFL picks, that's not going to be the case for all the guys that you are playing who are underclassmen. And so for Northwestern, I think it's important to still rely on guys like Chris Bergen and guys like Joe Spivak and Brandon Joseph on the defense. Obviously, Bergen and Joseph aren't going anywhere, but still like prioritize winning football games and being competitive in football games because I don't know how you're feeling about this, but I feel like there's to a certain extent playing younger players is a detriment.
I think that, I do agree with that. I think that, a player like Chris Bergen, should still be kind of, have play the same role he's been playing all year, kind of the leader of that defense. I think that, of course, they should be in every game to win. I think that is also fits his message to the players. It's not like okay, we're going to play a lot of young guys now, because honestly, I think the reality of it is they are playing a lot of young guys, whether they like it or not. Even on both sides of the ball, on offense, you've got Tyus, who's a true freshman, getting a lot of touches on the offensive line. You've got a guy like, Josh Preeb, getting pretty solid minutes. He's a starter. And then on the defensive side of the ball too, in the linebacking core, like you were talking about, Bryce Gallagher, and, among others, Bryce Jackson. So I think that Fitz doesn't really have a choice in terms of, it's not like he can go looking, deeper into his roster. Like Peter McIntyre's a senior, it's his last year in Evanston. And, I'm sure he's a great guy, but he just has not been playing the caliber of football that is anywhere close to, a Patty Fisher or Blake Gallagher. And that's, been clear so far this season.
And then moving on to individuals on the field, Didi, who is one offensive player you would like to get more reps for the rest of the season?
I think a lot of young guys are getting, time on the field right now that, I think before the season I would have wanted to, I think that deserved to be out on the field before the season. And the fact of the matter is just, not to blame any of the players necessarily. Like, it's not to blame any of the players, but none of the young guys that have, had minutes so far, not none of them, but most of them, at least on the offensive side of the ball, have not really, had much to show for it. The best two players on offense for last game were Stephon Robinson and Andrew Clare, I think pretty definitively, both of whom are leaving after the end of this year. I think that, the players that are getting time on the field already, who are young, like Anthony Tyus and Evan Hull, Bryce Kurtz, all deserve, to be out there getting minutes. Outside of that, it's just tough to tell. I mean, yeah, I think it'd be nice to see, a player like Jensen Hooper Price and Wayne Dennis, taller players who can, maybe Helinski can, take more chances with. I think that I definitely want to see them on the field more. But outside of that, don't have much. What about you?
I would say one. I mean, I would say one player that I haven't seen at all, and I would like to see a little bit of is Jordan Mosley, 4-star recruit coming into this year, and playing at receiver and having that track star speed. He was a stud runner in high school, and he brings a ton of speed down the field, big playability. And outside of Robinson, there isn't really a consistent threat in this passing group. Bryce Kurtz has had his moments, but he hasn't really shown consistency. Same thing with Malik Washington. And I would like to see what Jordan Mosley, the young kid, has, because he has all the talent in the world, and the sky is the limit for this guy. And he has the potential to be one of the best receivers that Northwestern has ever seen on the field. And with Reggie Florima coming in next year, I think that building a foundation of having Jordan Mosley as a top receiver going into next year will only be better for another talented guy like Florima. 2 weeks from now, Northwestern will be at home playing Rutgers. It's homecoming week, and they're hoping for a bounce back. So from NU Takes, I'm Michael Bartholomew.
And I'm DD Jen.
We'll see y'all next week.